What's going on, everybody? It's PapaStones coming back with another video. So today we're going to be taking a look at the top 25 cards from Jump to Lightspeed that are not legendary. 25 is what I can narrow it down to, so this is what we're going to do. We'll talk about the cards and I'll let you know why I think they're good. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Let me know if you think I missed any or if you think some of them are overhyped or whatever it may be. But first things first, we're going to start off in the blue category. We have No Glory Only Results. It's a 5-cost blue-black. It's a rare. And it says, take control of a non-leader unit, then defeat it. This card basically just power creeps Vanquish in all sorts of ways. Vanquish is already playable as like a 1 to 2 of in most control decks. And this basically says, I'm Vanquish but better. You can take things with when defeated effects and gain them. You can get rid of Lurking TIE Phantom-esque abilities with this because you are taking control of it and then you're defeating it rather than your card defeating the opponent's whatever. This card is just a house. It will definitely see some action. Next up, we got Director Krennic. This is a 2-cost blue-black uncommon. It's a 2/2 shielded, and it says the first unit you play each round that has a when defeated ability costs 1 less. So outright for the aggro style blue black, thinking what's his name, Gar Saxon. This obviously goes in, right? It's just a better Crafty Smuggler, or it could be your 4th, 5th, 6th copy of Crafty Smuggler if you want to go that route. In when defeated decks, it gets you bonuses from that, and it's just a 2/2 shielded. This card is a house. I guarantee you it will see some play. Next up, we got Chimera. This one's a little debatable, but it's pretty good if you ask me. It is a 6-cost blue-black uncommon. It's a 5/6, and it says when played, you may use a when defeated ability on another friendly unit, and when defeated, create 2 TIE Fighter tokens. The when defeated is kind of just a bonus. Granted, the only bad thing with this is you have to have something with a when defeated to get good value out of it. But if you are obviously playing something that's focused around it, like Thrawn and things like that, being able to, say, trigger a Val and get 4 XP, or trigger a Cobb Vanth and get 20 mils for 2 2-drops kind of concept. It's pretty good card. I think if Thrawn's viable, this will for sure be in it, right? So definitely one to pick up. On the green stuff, we got Victor Leader. It's a 3-cost green-black. It's a rare. It is a 2/4, and it says each other friendly space unit gets +1/+1. It's basically like the Dodonna of space. It costs 3. It buffs all your dudes. It's more or less for like a space swarmy style deck, I would assume, or like an all space deck or something along those lines. But being able to give everything +1/+1 on a 2/4 body is kind of annoying. So I think this one's gonna be solid. Next up, we got Blue Leader. This is a 3-cost green-white uncommon. It's a 3/3 with ambush, and when played, you may pay 2 if you do move this unit to the ground arena and give 2 experience tokens to it. It is a ground unit. So the thing about this is there's so much versatility. I think this is one of the best cards we've seen in a while. A 3/3 spaceship with ambush is a pretty decent stat line. You can kill off, the 2/3s and all that if people are playing them. Also, you can bring it in as a 5/5 for 5 with ambush, which is also not terrible. You can also do the crazier thing, which is if they have a 2/3 spaceship, you can ambush it, and then afterwards, after you've ambushed, you can pay the 2 and move it to the ground arena as a now 5/3. This card's just super versatile. It does pretty much anything you could want it to do. I think this card is super good. Moving on, though, we have the Invisible Hand. It's a 6-cost green-black rare. It's a 6/6. It says when played and when this unit completes an attack and survives, You may search the top 8 cards of your deck for a droid unit, reveal it, and draw it. If it costs 2 or less, you may play it for free. Put the other cards at the bottom of your deck in a random order. Obviously, this screams Dooku, right? It's a separatist. It's a 6/6 invisible hand, right? The thing about it is, drawing the droid, I don't know, I haven't looked too much to be honest, but the fact is, you don't care if it costs 2 or less. Obviously, if it does, that's kind of nice because you get a free unit. But the fact of the matter is, if it's just a good card that's a droid, right? Like, say it costed 5 or something like that, you still get to draw the card, but you just don't play it for free. So this card gets you card value. It's got decent stats, right? A 6 cost 6/6 spaceship, and it comes out earlier, obviously, in Dooku as like a 4 drop, probably. I think this card's pretty solid. I don't know if Dooku will be viable, but if it is, it'll for sure be on Invisible Hand, right? Even not, though, maybe there are decks that are playing enough droids to where they would want to take advantage of this. I realistically need to look at the droid category, but I know cheese-wise, there's Swarming Vulture Droid Turbo, right? Like, think about that. You're playing Dooku, Swarming Vulture Droids. You play this as 4 resource and just keep drawing Swarming Vulture Droids and playing them. Just an idea, you know. We'll see. Next up, we got Luke Skywalker. It's a 2 cost green-white rare. It is a 3/2, and it pilots for 3, and it gives +3/+2, and it says, if this upgrade would be defeated, you may instead move him to the ground arena as a unit and exhaust him. So, this card's solid. It's flexible, right? A 3/2 for 2 is okay, right? It's got the more aggressive stat line. But what you're going to want to do is obviously pilot it, right? Like, you'll get to play your spaceship turn 1, then turn 2, you give it a +3/+2, and then if they end up dealing with your spaceship, you just replace it with a Luke unit on the ground instead. It's kind of an annoying card. I think it's going to be a decent card. Next up, we got Salvage. It's a 0 cost green event. It's an uncommon. It says play a vehicle unit from your discard pile, paying its cost, then deal 1 damage to it. This basically gives you extra options to play reanimation, right? Like, the only real reanimation we had was Palp's Return. That was, you know, it costs 6, and then you played the unit for 6 less, or if it was Force, it was 8 less. This basically gives you options to grab smaller things if you would like, or in certain situations, if you're playing, you know, some style of strategy where you're playing, like, I don't know if it'll, you know, be a thing, but like, say you're playing like, what's his name, Trench, or Afra, or something like that, something that like mills cards from your own deck. It gives you extra copies of ways to find and get those cards back, you know? I mean, it has to be vehicles with this one, right? But you could get, say you're playing into a control matchup, you could get you had 3 of these and 3 Palp's Return, you could get a Relentless 6 different times from your bin. I think this card's got potential. And then also, like I said, if you want smaller stuff, it has that option, you know? You could get 3 Swarming Vulture Droids for this bad boy. Keep the options open, you know. Next up, we got Eject. It's a 2 cost green rare. It's an event. It says detach pilot upgrade, move it to the ground arena as a unit and exhaust it, then draw a card. Obviously, the main thing that everyone's thinking about with this right now is Poe Dameron Leader, right? You can eject your Poe Dameron Leader and just have a 4/6 on the ground on turn 2. But this also has other niche applications if you're already playing this, like say in Poe, right? Sure, like you'll probably want to do that, right? Because it'll give you good stats. But there are times, like say your opponent plays a spaceship, you play a spaceship, they play a pilot on it, they then run into your guy, trade favorably, but the pilot's giving them enough health to survive. You can eject their pilot and then kill their spaceship that has it on there and draw a card. It's got niche applications other than just Poe, but obviously the Poe interaction is probably the one that everyone's most excited about. However, I think this card is worth the pickup regardless. So, yeah. Next up, onto the red stuff. We have red 5. This is a 3-cost red-white. It's a 3/4. It's an uncommon. It says on attack, you may deal 2 damage to a damaged unit. In general, the card's good enough. In the new Luke Skywalker, it will be even better, because if you have multiple fighters, right, you play, attack with said fighter that's not red 5. You use Luke, ping a damage onto something, then you swing with red 5, deal 2 damage. So it's basically like dealing 3 on swing. I think this, even without that though, like if your opponent just has a damaged unit, like they traded somewhere else, your red 5 can swing at it. It's got a good stat line, being a 3/4 for 3. This card is good for sure. We'll see some action. Next up, we got They Hate That Ship. This one I'm a little more skeptical about, but at the same time, I think it's really sweet. It's a 1-cost red-white that event. It's a rare, and it says an opponent creates 2 TIE Fighter tokens and readies them, then play a vehicle unit from your hand. It costs 3 less. So I'm thinking of this more as a non-aggro card and more of a control-y card, right? So I'm thinking something like Rey or Yoda or whatever it may be, the blue-red control hero decks. You could play this for 1. So basically your vehicle's costing 2 less since this costs 1, right? But you could play this for 1, and you could, in theory, play a redemption on turn or on resource 6 and heal your base if you're desperate for healing. You could say you were playing this in red-green or something. You could play a home 1 for 6. There's just like a lot of high-end spaceships that you could value cheating out for giving them 2 TIE Fighters. Generally speaking, I don't like giving my opponent cards if I don't have if I don't have to. But I think in certain situations, this will be good enough to see play, because it gives these blue-red controls, or just red control, I guess, whatever color you may be in. It gives them options to earlier get to their heals and whatever it may be, or their big bombs, right? Just for 2/1s. I think it's worth looking into. Next up, we got Trench Run. This is a 1-cost red-white event. It is a rare. It says attack with a fighter unit. For this attack, it gets +4/+0 and gains on attack. Discard 2 cards from the defending player's deck. Deal unpreventable damage equal to the difference in the discarded card's cost to this unit. So I honestly don't think this card's that great. However, in Kazuda specifically, I think this card is a powerhouse, because being able to give +4/+0 and not deal with the downside is sweet. If you just play it outright, though, I feel like it's not going to be very good, because in testing, there were times where I'd play this and, you mill the opponent, and almost every time they would deal enough damage to kill my spaceship, so I wouldn't even get the attack off. But in Kazuda, specifically, this card's crazy. Next up, we got War Juggernaut. This is a 6-cost red uncommon. It's a 3/7. Importantly, it is a vehicle. It says this unit gets +1/+0 for each damaged unit, and when played, deal 1 damage to each of any number of units. So I think people know about this card, but I feel like some people also are sleeping on this card. I'm imagining this in Jango Fett, right? You are playing Triple Dark Raid. Obviously, you already have a bunch of good 6-drops, right? You got Fire Spray and Raider. But you'll probably slot in 2 of these, I would think. Maybe 1, but I would think 2, and just drop maybe the Exploit tank or something like that. Because there will be times where if there's, say a few units on board, right? You played a Kylo's TIE turn 1, they played a ground unit. You play a P-38 turn 2, they play a different ground unit, and then you play this. You play Triple Dark Raid, you grab this, you damage every unit. You ping their 2 and your 2, and now you could also ping itself also. You ping itself, and now you have a, 5 units damage. You have an 8/6 that's coming in ready to swing. Also, so you get 8 damage for free there. You can also later in the game, right, you could just use it to exhaust with Django. It is a when played ability on a unit that deals damage, so you can exhaust things in that way. You could technically use it to kill off your own stuff if you had, like, say you needed a ping from your P38 and it was at 1 health, you could kill it off. This card has super good versatility, and off of Dark Raid specifically, I think this card will come out and go absolutely nuts and probably steal games from you. So definitely watch out for this one. In the same boat as Django, we have IG-2000. Initially, I was not very high on this card. I still am not the biggest fan of this card, but let's talk about it. It's a 4-cost red-black rare. It is a 3/4 with Overwhelm and says when played, deal 1 damage to each of up to 3 units. So, I wasn't a big fan because of the stats. It is a 4-cost 3/4, right? We just saw Red 5 recently that was a 3-cost 3/4. This also goes back to Django specifically. Currently speaking, Django has really bad 4-drop plays, other than obviously a triple Dark Raid if you have it, or some of them are now playing like on the doorstep, right, which gives you 3 1/1s. This is kind of that in a sense, but better. It's a spaceship that you can grab off a Dark Raid if you need to. It deals damage to 3 units, so if you play this on the Django turn, like say you have nothing better to do, like you Dark Raid on 4, right, and then turn 5 you have like a 1-drop and an IG-2000, you can flip your Django, then you play your IG-2000 and tap down 3 units. I think this card will be super good in Django. In other places, I don't think it's that great, to be honest. Maybe the 1 damage is noteworthy, but I think in Django specifically, this card will for sure be in the deck. Next up, we have BB-8. This is a 1-cost red-white. It's an uncommon. It is a 1/4, and it pilots for 1, and you can gives +1/+2. And then when you play it as an upgrade, you may pay 2 if you do ready a resistance unit. In testing this card, it's kind of felt, sometimes a little hit or miss. However, you can just play it as a 1/4 or just as a 1/2 upgrade for 1 if you choose. But there is the dream scenario where like you play it for 3 basically, and you ready like a Poe unit, right? Like you attacked with your Poe unit this turn, you did 6 and defeated something with the discard, and then you play this and re-ready said Poe unit and get to do it again. Like, there is a bunch of dream scenarios with this card specifically, and the fact that it's a 1-drop 1/4 is fine, because 1-drop 1/4 is already kind of playable with like old R2 and stuff like that. Yeah, I just think this is a good card. Next up, we have Cham Syndulla. Wasn't also that high on this card, to be honest, but if they don't change anything about Han Solo, this card's probably okay. It's a 4-cost red unit. It's an uncommon. It's a 5/4. It says when played, if an opponent controls more resources than you, you may put the top card of your deck into play as a resource. This is basically a counter to Han Solo in a sense. For these control decks, thinking like Bosk or Thrawn if it's going to be red, but like Bosk specifically, or even like the hero versions, like say Rey or something like that. Anakin maybe, I guess, I don't know. But if Han is still relevant, if they don't change anything about the DJ interaction and Han is still a dominant force, this card either hits the main deck if it's that prevalent like it was last set, or hits the side deck for sure. They DJ, they steal your resource. It feels bad, right, if you can't answer it, but if you can't, you can still also play this and get just a new resource with that. Or there's also the more telegraphed option that you can do. If you have this in hand and like you don't want to resource any of your cards, you could in theory not resource on turn 4 and just play this and then get a 5th resource that way. There's options with this card. I think it's definitely got some high possibilities, and like I said, if Han stays as relevant as it was last set, this card for sure will be around in some sense. On to yellow, though. We have Sidon Athano. This is a 2-cost yellow rare. It's a 2/2 and says when played as a unit, you may attach this unit as an upgrade to an enemy vehicle unit without a pilot on it, and it gives -2/-2. This basically just gives yellow a control tool like Perilous Position. It doesn't exhaust, so it's not as good as Perilous in a sense, but it's also one less. And if you really need be, you could just play it as a 2-drop 2/2. But generally speaking, this will answer turn 1 plays. You can, you're playing in yellow, they play a Kylo Sty Silencer, you play a Sidon, you kill it. This gives you a bunch of options for the controller aspect of yellow. Yeah, I like this card. Next up, we have Boshek. This is a 3-cost 3/4. It's an uncommon. It pilots for 2 in a yellow. And it says, when played as an upgrade, discard 2 cards from your deck. Return each of those cards with an odd cost to your hand. And gives +1/+2. This card is a house, I think. The fact that you generally probably won't play it as a unit unless you just need something for 3. But there's better 3-drop units, right? But when you pilot it, if you built your deck in a way, in general, like if you're playing odd cost Han specifically, this would be pilot for 2 draw 2 cards. But generally speaking, like most decks are kind of, intermingled, like probably half odd, half even, or maybe 60-40, whatever it may be. This card will generally at least draw you 1 card and give you +1/+2. You could hit the money and hit +2 or draw 2 cards. You could also fail, but still, generally speaking, you probably won't. I think this card is definitely good. It's free draw and an upgrade for your spaceships. Think Wedge too, like they play a lot of 1-drop spaceships, and then you could, play a 1-drop spaceship and play this, draw 2 cards probably, since a lot of their stuff is more odd costed and the pilot costs are the even stuff. Yeah, this card has a lot of potential, I think. Next up, we got Mandalorian. This is a yellow, 5-cost double yellow uncommon. And it is a 5/6 and says when played as a unit, exhaust up to 2 ground units, and then it pilots for 2 in a single yellow and is +3/+1, and says when played as an upgrade, exhaust an enemy unit in this arena. So in Mandalorian specifically, if they're playing double yellow now, this card for sure goes in. If not, you're probably still playing this as just a pilot because it's 1 yellow, even for 2. It gives good stats on the pilot side. It gives aggressive stats and slows them down. So like if you played, like let's go back to Wedge, for example. You play your 1-cost spaceship, and then, well, I guess you wouldn't want to do that right away because you're not going to exhaust anything. Say you just play a 2-cost spaceship, right? And then you pass, and then next turn you have the initiative, you play this, and you exhaust their spaceship that they have to try and answer your spaceship, and you get an extra 3 damage. Yeah, I mean, this card has a lot of versatility, especially in double yellow. Maybe it on, like, I'm not positive, but it might make the cut in Han. I haven't tested Han next set because I just don't want to play Han right now. I mean, I have the option to, but I don't want to test it. I want to test newer stuff. But I think this could also possibly make the cut in Han, right? Like, Cantina Bouncer's their 5-drop right now that puts 2 cards back in hand, or puts a card back in hand. This does that in a sense. It slows them down in a different way, but it has the option to do other things. Maybe it's like half and half, right? Like 2 Bouncer, 2 Mando. Who knows? But I think this card's good. Next up, we got Ahsoka Tano. It's a 4-cost yellow-white rare. It is a 3/5, so kind of average stats, not very good. But it says when played, an opponent discards a card from their hand. If it's a unit, you may exhaust a unit. So super versatile. It kind of says, like, if they have the option, they have to discard an event. If not, then you have to discard a card and exhaust something. However, sometimes events will still be worth keeping and they'll discard a unit and just exhaust their guy because the event's good enough to not care. But yellow's getting more hand disruption, and this is one of the better cards, being able to possibly slow them down. And even if not, they still lose a card. It's definitely a good one. It's debatable if it's better than Kira, right? Which is like the same stat line, but you get to look at their hand and make something cost more. It could be played in tandem. I think this card's pretty good, though. Next up, we got the Mist Hunter. This is a yellow-black 3-cost uncommon. It's a 3/4, and it says, on attack, if you played a bounty hunter or pilot card this phase, you may draw a card. This card is super designed for Cad Bane. I think it's definitely where it'll fit in the most. I'm not sure if it fits in other places. I haven't tested out too much other stuff with it. But in Cad Bane specifically, this card is insane. It has like the perfect curve for it, right? Like you play your 2-drop or your 1-drop or whatever, and then next turn you play a Mist Hunter, and then followed up next turn you play a 4-lom, you ambush some ground unit, then you attack with this and you get a draw card. Then say if you're playing pilots or any other bounty hunters, whatever it may be, you're just constantly drawing. They have to answer the Mist Hunter unless they want you to keep drawing cards. It's also an underworld, right, for Cad Bane again. I think this card is super good for that specifically. Not sure about as a whole, but maybe still also good enough if there's like a pilot deck playing stuff, right? Next up, we got Fireball. This is a 2-cost yellow-white. It is a 3/3 spaceship uncommon. It has ambush and says when the regroup phase starts, deal 1 damage to this unit. Another card also designed for Kazuda. However, I think this one is good enough to play even not in Kazuda. Just because basically it's, at worst, it's a 3/2 ambush, right? Because you're going to deal 1 damage to it if it lives. So this can answer any turn 1 spaceship. If you're playing something more designed for the long haul, or maybe the medium haul, right? Like say you were playing Han and you didn't want to get out aggroed by something along those lines, you could play Fireball, and it's basically like I'll answer any of your 3 health spaceships with this, and if it's a 1 attack spaceship for some reason, then my guy will survive. I think Fireball is just a sweet card, and like I said, obviously in Kazuda, if they play a 2/3 on turn 1, then you just run it in with this and then turn it off, and then it survives. I think this card is pretty good and definitely a mainstay in Kazuda too. Next up, we got Black Squadron Scout Wing. This is a 5-cost yellow-white. It is a 4/6, and it is a common. It says when you play an upgrade on this unit, you may attack with this unit. It gets +1/+0 for this attack. So the problem with piloting as a mechanic, I think, is that it's an upgrade, right? So it takes your action. So nothing feels worse than, say you play your spaceship, right? The opponent plays their spaceship. You play an upgrade as your first thing, like a pilot upgrade, or any upgrade, I guess, in this case. You play an upgrade, and then it's your opponent's turn, so they can now waylay, or they could power the dark side, or they could whatever it may be, and you wasted the upgrade, and you wasted your action. You didn't get anything out of it. This card goes around that. The fact that, sure, you could still waylay this card afterwards, but if I have a Black Squadron and then I give it a pilot, I get to attack with this card immediately. So if, say, going back to Mando, right? I play the Mando, I exhaust something, I get to attack, and it gets +1 also, so it attack for 8 immediately. And then sure, you can bounce it back to my hand, but I already got my 8 damage in, so it does not feel that good. This card kind of just gets around the problem with upgrades in this game. So I think this card will be good. Who knows if it'll see action? I'm not sure what deck would be playing it, but I think it is good for pilot style decks. Next up, we got Commandeer. This is a 5 cost yellow event. It's a rare. It says take control of a non-leader vehicle unit that costs 6 or less without a pilot on it, and if you do, ready it. At the start of the next regroup phase, return that unit to its owner's hand. Not 100% sure this will see the main deck. If this set is extremely space focused, like the new meta is extremely space focused, it might. But it'll probably for sure see the side deck because this card can be super annoying. Sure, it's non-leader vehicle and it has to cost 6 or less, but think of all the good spaceships that are running around right now that cost 6 or less that you wouldn't mind stealing and then giving them back. Say you're on the Sacred Resource turn against Django and they're like, okay, I'll play a Fire Spray. And you're like, okay, I'll play Commandeer. So now I have a ready Fire Spray and I get to attack with your Fire Spray. And then at the start of the turn, you have to put it back in your hand. So if you want to play that Fire Spray again, you're spending 6 again or whatever it may be. I think this card could be super annoying. It will definitely be worth owning. Probably, like I said, makes the side deck. Who knows if it makes the main deck though, if unless it's, like I said, everything is very space focused. And last but not least, we got R2D2. This is a 1 cost white. It is a 1/4. It's an uncommon, and it pilots for 0 and gives +1/+1, and the attached unit gains you may deploy or you may play or deploy 1 additional pilot on this unit. So same concept as BBA. It's a 1 cost 1/4, which is a okay stat line for a 1-drop, and then it pilots for totally free and gives you +1/+1, which is fine, right? You get +1/+1 for absolutely free, just a card out of your hand. And then it doesn't even take up your pilot spot. So if you would like to use another pilot, say, let's go back to like a wedge example, right? Say your first turn, you could go something along the lines of play a 1-drop spaceship, give it an R2 for free, give it +1/+1. Let's say like we're doing Cartel Turncoat, because that's the one that sticks out to me for some reason. So now you have a 3/4, and then you use wedge and you put a bow check on it, and now you have a 4/6 that could possibly draw you 2 more cards if you mill right. I think R2 is just good. It's versatile. It's a free +1/+1 if you need it. It's a 1/4 if you need it. It's just a good card. I really like this one as a whole. Also, I want to talk about this because I was thinking about it along the way, but those were the top 25 for me. I didn't mention Chewbacca. I do think this card is a house. I will preface this. The only reason I didn't put it in this list was because it was a special card. I mean, I know you can now technically get these cards from the set, but if you really want them, it's going to be from the structure deck guaranteed, or if you buy them. But we're going to talk about it as the bonus 26, right? It's Chewbacca. It's a 5 cost green-white special. It is a 5/6, and it pilots for 3, and it's +3/+3, and it says attached unit gains. This unit can't be defeated or returned to hand by enemy card abilities. This card just gives the most annoying stats to any spaceship you want to stick around. It deals with control options as most well as it can by giving it the lurking tie style effect. You have to run into this spaceship to kill it. You can't put it back in my hand. You can't blow it up with a vanquish. None of that. Sure, you could steal with no glory, no results, but that's a different topic. I think this card is also a house, and if it wasn't a special, it for sure would have been on this list. But since it's special, I decided not to include it. But if you get these from your packs, you should definitely hold on to them because this card's good. But yeah, that's all I got for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you think of the list. Let me know if I missed any of them that you think are super good in the non-legendary category. Or let me know if you think I'm just spot on, whatever it may be. I'm free to chat. I'm free to debate, whatever it may be. Drop a thumbs up on the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.